Hi, and welcome to That's Ready Mysterious. Join me for an intriguing look into real-life mysteries. Who was the mad gasser of Mattoon? What was whaling at the Wilga waterhole? I'm not going to solve those mysteries, but they'll be interesting to learn about. I'm your host, Kelly with an I. Transcripts and references for all episodes can be found at that'sreadymysterious.wordpress.com. No apostrophe and no exclamation point. Today's tale is about Cynthia Anderson. Cynthia Anderson disappeared in 1981 after having dreams that she would one day be abducted and murdered. What happened to her? Cynthia Anderson was born on February 4th, 1961. She also went by Cindy. In 1981, Cindy was working as a legal secretary at the law office of James Rabbit and Jay Feldstein in Toledo, Ohio. She had brown hair and brown eyes. She had a chickenpox scar on her forehead and a fishhook-shaped scar on her inner right knee. She was about 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed about 115 pounds. On August 4th, 1981, at around 8:30 a.m., a 20-year-old Cindy left her Lambertville, Michigan home for her 20-minute commute to work. She was wearing a white V-neck dress with pink pinstripes, brown pantyhose, and beige strappy sandals. The commute was typical, and Cindy arrived at the law office at 8:50 a.m. Cindy parked her white 1980 Chevrolet Citation, locked her doors, and went into the law office. As she normally did, Cindy locked the door of the office behind her. She turned on the air conditioning to cool down the office and then turned the radio on to a low volume. Cindy normally worked alone in the law office in the mornings. She always kept the door locked while she was there alone. Cindy had been receiving strange, seemingly threatening calls at work, so the law offices had a buzzer installed in Cindy's office. If there was trouble, Cindy could hit the buzzer and the shop next door would be alerted to the trouble. Cindy was last seen in the office at 9:45 a.m. At 10 o'clock, Cindy's mother called the office and there was no answer. At around noon, Jim Rabbit and Jay Feldstein arrived at the office. Jim described what he saw. He said, "Jay and I came back from downtown, got to the door, and the lights were on. The door was locked. We unlocked the door, went inside, yelled for Cindy, and there was no answer. I started to look out front. Cindy, when she would leave, would place the phones on hold, and that wasn't done either." Jim explained that the air conditioning was still on, and that the romance novel that Cindy had been reading had been left open. It was open to the only violent scene in the book, a scene in which the heroine was abducted at knife point. Jim went on to explain that his and Jay's desk were prepared for the day and that the mail had been brought in. He said the office smelled like nail polish remover. Cindy's purse and keys were missing, but her car was still in the parking lot, locked. Cindy has never been seen again. There was no note left behind. About a year before her disappearance, Cynthia Anderson started having dreams that she'd be abducted and murdered. She confided in her mother about her dreams. She said that in the dream, someone she knew knocked at the door. She answered the door, and the man abducted and murdered her. Then, 10 months before her disappearance, someone wrote, "I love you, Cindy" by GW on a wall outside her office. The message was left up for 6 months before being cleaned off. Then it was rewritten a few weeks later, even bigger and clearer. The man who left the message eventually came forward. The note was intended for a different Cindy, so he was released. A colleague of Cindy's said that Cindy had been receiving disturbing phone calls at work in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. In fact, the day before Cindy disappeared, Larry Mullins, a client of the lawyers Cindy worked for, was in the office to pay a fee. He said that while he was there, Cindy received a phone call. She reacted as if it were obscene and quickly hung up the phone. It rang again, so Cindy answered it and quickly hung it back up. This so unnerved Mullins that he went home and called the police, asking them to do a wellness check on Cindy. The investigation began immediately. Detective William Adams of the Toledo Police Department led the investigation. He said there were no signs of a struggle inside or outside the office. He found Cindy's car parked in front of the office. Cindy had saved a considerable amount, yet her bank account remained untouched. Her Social Security number, which was required for legal employment in the United States, was never used at another workplace, so Cindy must not have run off and found another job. Adams said the disappearance was a mystery. 1 month after Cindy's disappearance, the Toledo Police Department received a phone call about Cindy. The caller said that Cindy was being held in a basement of a white house. The caller kept saying that she was scared and kept talking in a low whisper. She kept saying that she had to go, and the police kept begging her to stay on the line. They kept asking for an exact address or something else that they could act on. The caller hung up, but called back a short time later. In this second call, the caller explained that there were 2 houses next door to each other owned by the same family. She said the family was out of town, but that their son was at home and that the son was the one holding Cindy captive. The police tried to act on the information in the call. They went street by street looking for houses, but were never able to identify them. Some people believed that Cindy had run off by herself, but her family disagreed. Michael Anderson, Cindy's father, was a Christian fundamentalist. He described Cindy as obedient, quiet, and popular, although he said she had changed leading up to her disappearance. He described her as acting like a debutante, spending more time in her makeup than usual, and dieting and skipping breakfast. He said she wouldn't have run off like that. Cindy's sister also didn't believe that Cindy would have just left. She explained that Cynthia had been looking forward to leaving her current job just 2 weeks later, and that she was going to be attending Bible college with her boyfriend, which Cindy was very excited for. What happened to Cynthia Anderson? Her father believed that she may have suffered from amnesia, but by the time he died in 2008, he believed that Cindy too was dead. Michael's obituary said that he was predeceased by Cynthia. No one has ever been charged with Cynthia's disappearance, but some suspects have been named. Anthony and Nathaniel Cook were 2 brothers convicted of killing 9 people in the area. Some believe the brothers may be responsible for Cindy's disappearance, although they denied any involvement. Jose Rodriguez and his lawyer Richard Neller were drug dealers and also suspects in Cynthia's disappearance. Some believe that Cindy saw or overheard a conversation between the pair and that she was murdered for it. An informant testified against Rodriguez, claiming he confessed to Cindy's murder, but he was deemed unreliable. What happened to Cynthia Anderson? Did she disappear all on her own, or was foul play involved? Were Cynthia's dreams premonitions or just coincidence? What do you think? Leave a comment and let me know what you think. Thanks for listening to today's episode of That's Ready Mysterious. Join me next week for another captivating mystery.